Hello everyone, welcome back. My name is J and this is my channel, The Blue Jay. And these past couple of days I have been reading Midnight Tides. I've been really enjoying it. It's been a really nice journey. I'm in chapter 7 or 8 more or less. And the other day I was watching one of AP's videos from his channel, A Critical Dragon. If you haven't checked it out, please check it because his videos are just so amazing. Really, I'm enjoying them so much. And he did a video on some of the symbols from Deadhouse Gates. And it made me realize just how many things I had not picked up on when I was reading it. And it motivated me in a way to kind of try and highlight some of the symbols that might be appearing in Midnight Tides. So I think I managed to find some. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not really sure if my interpretations of these symbols are correct or not. But I will be going through some of these in this video, and also my initial impressions to the new setting, to the new characters that we have met in the first book, Frozen Blood, I think it's called, of Midnight Tides. And yeah, so that's the plan for today. So thank you for clicking in the video, and I really hope you enjoy. Firstly, I wanted to say that I am aware that many readers of the series and many other fantasy readers are aware that Erikson changes setting and the cast of characters quite a lot, and some people might get a bit annoyed because, well, I mean, if you're in book 5 and you're introduced to a completely new cast of characters, except for only one character, then it's quite a change, and people get really invested into the series, so it's a shift of mindset, I would say. But I personally, I enjoy so much getting to discover a new continent, especially a continent so different as this, because it's a kind of rainforest, jungle-ish kind of environment, and it's really different to everything we've seen up until now in Malazan. And especially meeting these amazing characters. I think these characters are my favorite from the whole series. I love them all so much. So I'm really happy with the change of setting. And also I was hearing the other day an interview with Steven Erikson, and he said that Midnight Tides is a story about brothers, while, for example, House of Chains was a story about sisters, Memories of Ice a story about mothers, Deadhouse Gates a story about friends, and then Gardens of the Moon, I think it was a story about soldiers or comrades or something like that. And so even though I don't have brothers or sisters or any kind of siblings, but I'm really interested to discover how he will explore these relationships, especially because I've heard a lot about the Benedict brothers and the Sengar brothers. So I'm really curious to see how that will develop in this book. And also one last thing that I wanted to mention is that the other day Steven Erikson shared one of his inspirations for Midnight Tides. I'm sure many of you have seen it, but he said that the Midnight Tides was inspired by the Dakota War in 1862, I think it was. And this war was a war between the Dakota against the United States, following 2 years of unfulfilled treaty obligations, including the failure to make payment on lands and provide healthcare, food or food. So after the war, many of these Dakotas were forced to flee their homelands. So I can already see many similarities with the story of Midnight Tides, but it's just really nice to see some of these inspirations that inspired Steven Erikson to write this amazing tale. So the first symbol that I wanted to touch upon is the whole idea about tides. The other day, I was watching one of the videos from AP, again, in his channel, A Critical Dragon, and he kept on talking about the imagery of insects and flies in the prologue, for example, of Deadhouse Gates, and aspects of disease and death and cape moths and the butterflies. So there's a constant theme that he kept on saying through the Chain of Dogs, for example, of the feeding of the dead and the cycle of death and rebirth and tying this with the cycle of civilizations, for example, where we get to visit in Dead House Gates a fallen civilization through the eyes of Felicin or Heboric. And there's elements of people of these civilizations who fell, who rose, who were destroyed, but there is still life. So there was this constant idea of this cycle of life. Ikarion, for example, also going through this journey, and he is a benefactor, but also a destroyer of places. Again, this cycle of repetition of civilization. And so the idea of insects throughout the feeding of the dead, and then they are the prey of other animals, for example, there's new life and life goes on. And so the idea of tides in Midnight Tides, I think, is really, really similar in that sense. We are firstly introduced to this really nice tale when we start the book that says that when giants knelt down and became mountains, one giant sees the sea for the first time and witnesses its endless motion and the tides. So we get the first here, the first mention of the tides. And then it continues on with the giant sleeping and the tides drowning him, with the minerals seeping into his flesh and the water and the wind eroding him over time, hiding his shape in the mountain. And so this is kind of a very fairy tale-like tale, but it to me it highlights many of the things about life, about the cycle of, you know, even the cycle of the giant being so ignorant and, you know, being buried down by the sea. He's underestimating the power of the tides and wearing down, eroding, but then new life comes on with the tides. So I think many of the things are really similar in terms of the cycle of life with the tides. So I think that's a symbol that I think might be appropriate in discussing here. Also, we see that when the Sengard brothers are descending to the stone bowl, there's this quote that I really liked, which was, "Perception shapes truth like waves on stone." And again, we have the image of these waves and the tide, and the way we think about the truth depends on our own perception, on our own perspective that we have at that time. So our truth may in a way change depending on our state of the time. Like waves eroding the sea, our perception changes about it with time and with the tides. And also we see in the conversation between Udinas and Withers, I think it is his name, we see that it says, "The deep roll of the tides, the passage of ages is measured by chance, the succession of wayward storms. This is how the world moves." Again, a cyclical kind of movement to the story. Even though things might happen in your life, even though really big events might be happening in this world, life continues on. The tides keep on coming up, going down, and life continues. So I think Erikson might be playing with this idea of these tides. Also, I really enjoyed how at the beginning of the chapter we get to see the idea of raptors and the owl and the mice kind of in we are presented to like a frozen night, and we see these raptors hunting, and then it also says the quote, "Dusk belonged to the hunters and the raptors were not done yet tonight." So I don't know if this quote is in a way foreshadowing something that will happen in the future, some kind of assassination or murder going on at night, but this predatorial act, this formation, I think it's a really powerful image. I'm not sure if this is something to do with hunting down the weaker ones. I'm not sure if this story will tell something about the most powerful civilizations and the cities, for example, Lether, hunting down the weaker tribes and civilizations, but I think it could have something to do with that. But it makes me ask myself, is the owl hunting the mice for survival, whereas some other really strong and really powerful civilizations, are they doing it for survival, or are they doing it for another motive like progress? So we again see at the end of one of the chapters this recurring image of the owl sailing across the path, silent on its broad dark wings. There was blood on its talons, blood around its beak. The hunter knew only hunting, and it was indifferent to the fear of the prey. Again, I think with the line indifferent to the fear of the prey really plays on with the theme of compassion, for example. Again, is it for survival? Is the lack of compassion inevitable when we try to survive in this world, when we try to progress, when we try to advance and keep on developing our society? Is it justifiable to keep on destroying others and keep on profiting from other weaker civilizations in order for us to grow and keep on living? So yeah, I was really interested to see that. Again, we see the images of the rats with Silka's ruin, and then his conversation with Seren Pedak, a character that I really enjoy in this book. And Silka's ruin tells Seren that you would deliver small countless deaths in the name of what? Convenience, when he talks about like she killing the rats. And I thought that was really nice, because I think, again, it's related to the idea of progress, getting rid of the small things that annoy us in some way, and we find maybe that are disturbing our way to our progress, so in our way to our own personal convenience. So, again, these rats see in Silka's ruin a spirit of promise. So the rats, in a way, who are the weaker, insignificant beings, they are trying to find a way out back to the old times before civilization, and we again see these rats beneath the palace, for example. So I think that's a really interesting image that I think it's worth pointing out. Maybe, I'm not entirely sure, I'm just guessing. One of the other themes that I think Steven Erikson plays a lot with in this book is the idea of civilization, the theme of progress against an alternative. For example, in the first scene, we get to see and we get to know a bit more about the Tiste Edur society. Again, we see a very clear contrast between the Edur in Midnight Tides and the ones that we saw in House of Chains. Those were very military. They were traveling the world and attacking others, and they seemed very aggressive. Here in Midnight Tides, they seem very tribal. They are assembled in villages, they are living from agriculture and seals, and they seem overall very peaceful. So that's a very clear contrast. One of the quotes that I think is really interesting is that it says, "A village it had been at birth, thus a village it would always be. No matter that almost 20,000 Edur and thrice that number of Lethari now resided within it." So I think in a way it's like kind of being true to yourself since you were born. In a way it's the idea against progress. It's against the idea of a static economy of not overcomplicating things, things staying quite simple, and that is really contrasted to the Lethari society. But to me, I don't think that Erikson is contrasting them to say one is better than the other. It just makes you reflect on the whole idea of civilization, on the things that we do and the things that we sacrifice in the name of civilization. We are all in a way part of this rat race for our own personal gain, but to me it makes me question, is it like instinct of human nature to continue wanting to achieve and gain more, even if it means putting others down and destroying other societies and cultures? Is it something that we should avoid? For example, one of the quotes that Benedict says is that he says, "My people believe in the stacking of coins, one atop the other, climbing, ever climbing to glorious heights. The climb signifies progress, and progress is the natural proclivity of civilization. Progress is the belief from which emerge the notions of destiny." So, is it natural for civilizations then? Can we break free of this climb? Or will we get destroyed if we seek to resist this climb, and then we will fall down of this mountain? And then also, is the glorious height upon the the top of the mountain so glorious as we think it is, or is it all some type of illusion? Are we constantly seeking to get these heights that we actually never stop climbing? Like, is life a continuous climb? Because I had a really interesting conversation with my father the other day, and we were speaking about how we live and we work, and we maybe have like 20 days of holidays a year, and in the end we end up retiring, but then we have many times health problems, and then we die. And so it makes me wonder, like, is life truly a continuous climbing? So much work, so much stress in the name of 20 days of holiday a year. Is that truly glory? Or is it just all an illusion that we seek to achieve, but then in the end we never end up achieving it in the end? So I think Erikson plays with these ideas of life, of gold, of materialism, of colonialism. Are we guided by gold? How much does it affect our actions, our intentions, our identities, our beliefs, our motives, and even our relationship? But it's something that I keep on questioning, and that's why I love these books, because it makes me question the whole idea of humanity in itself. Do we seek a monetary compensation in everything we do, for example? I really liked one of the other quotes that contrasted this really well, and it said, "The division between life and death was measured in incremental jostling for position amidst all devouring progress. No one could afford compassion. Accordingly, none expected it from others either." And I think this quote is so vital to understand the whole story, because as we all know, the theme of compassion is very prominent in the whole Malazan Book of the Fallen. This compassion is in a way putting the whole idea of civilization under quite a negative light, I would say. And it's something that I didn't expect Erikson to point out so directly, because normally what I see Erikson does is that he gives you a dilemma and it lets you decide by yourself whether you think it's good or bad. But here he's pointing quite directly at the lack of compassion in the idea of civilization and progress. Because he says that progress and compassion are two things that cannot really coexist with each other, because of the very nature of the system that has been built around the idea of progress, because it's devouring, it's cunning, it's individualistic, it's built on the assumption that in order to grow, and we must climb, and we must leave compassion behind us in order for us to continue growing and continue advancing. And the conversation between Troll, Sengar and Fear, for example, where he says, "There will be war, brother, with the Lethari. Faiths, words, and swords. History resounds with their interminable clash. Therefore, is this interminable clash something that is in itself inevitable? Is it something that we can, in a way, avoid or not?" So I really liked that idea. And with that, I really wanted to link it with the idea of the whole system. The system of economic development, of progress of our society. In a way, we've built this system in a way that the whole idea of economic development is the backbone of our society. How we interact with others, how we relate, how we help others, everything revolves around this idea of development and progress. It's quite a visceral term, I would say. But when we see the three half-bloods who are trying to destroy or collapse the whole system with the help of Tihol, and we get to see how Tihol, I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, I'm not sure if it's Tihol or Tihol, but we see how Tihol almost destroyed the whole system one time. And it made me realize truly how fragile the whole system is, how much faith we put, how much trust we give to it in the form of giving, for example, money to banks, for example, in the 2008 crisis. We give everything to the system, and we know how fragile it is. We've seen it, how it has been almost at the border of collapse in the past, but we still give more to it. But on top of that system, is there someone who is taking charge of all of it? Or is it all, in the end, an empty throne? So I'm not sure if this has a relation to the holes of the book, the idea of the holes and the magic system. But is it all an illusion? Have we put all of our trust in something that really doesn't exist? I'm not sure, but this quote again kind of reflects all of it. An empty throne atop a mountain of coins. So I don't know, like, is this idea of coins, of money, all built upon the assumption that it's all an illusion, an empty throne? And related to that, again, we see in this story the themes of debt, the relationship between debt and progress. We see debt being a very recurring image within Lether, and it seems very deeply ingrained within the idea of progress, the idea of development, of civilization, building a better world. It almost seems like a synonym of keep advancing in life. I don't know if you've all felt the same, but sometimes I feel like in order to keep on growing, in order to build a family, in order to settle down, you need to find a debt, you need to get a loan to buy a new house, you need to get a loan to maybe move to another country, you need to get loans and indebt yourself in order to continue with your own life and progress in your professional or personal life. So, for example, in the quote that says, "True Sengar saw chains upon Lether, he understood why they worshipped an empty throne. Progress was necessity, growth was gain. Death was the binding force of all nature, of every people and every civilization. Debt was its own language, which were used words like negotiation, compensation, and justification." Again, even though the Lethari seem the most powerful ones, they seem very powerful, really strong, because they are attached to the idea of expansion, of colonialism, of advancement and everything. But in the end, I think they're the most powerless, really, because they are so changed to the idea of debts, the idea of the whole system. They are so chained to this empty throne, to this illusion of their perfect world, that I think they are actually the most powerless, really. But that's my own assumption, really. Then we see again the presence of money is very recurring throughout. Something that surprised me was that it was present in the burial of the Edur fisherman. In the quote, "A figure of copper coins, the Edur singular use of money. It was the armor of the dead. The Lethari used money to purchase the opposite, more like the illusion of the opposite, wealth as life's armor." So we see two very clear differences with the concept of money. So I really appreciate this two viewpoints of money. Again, Erickson is not saying to us this is good or this is bad, but it's just funny how one views money as the armor of the dead and one views money as the illusion of the armor of the living, as the illusion of life. So that was really nice and really, really beautiful prose in there, I would say. And then we see the drownings of the murderers and the thieves and the traitors in Letheras. And we see that they have to carry money behind their backs, and that money will depend on their charge for their crimes, basically. So again, it's the whole idea of carrying the burden of money. Like, so many of these end up dying and end up drowning in the canal because they are chained to this system. They are chained to, continue growing and continue developing themselves. Again, another quote that I really enjoyed. I know I'm listing many of these quotes, but I feel like Midnight Tides, maybe I wasn't paying attention in the previous book, but I feel like in Midnight Tides, there's so many quotes that are so worth analyzing. One of them was, "The problem with gold was that the way it crawled, where nothing else could, it seeped out from secrets, flowered in what should have been lifeless cracks. It strutted when it should have remained hidden." And I think this quote is so true, because sometimes you realize how everything revolves around gold and money. Everyone is involved in things because of money. Businesses operate because of sales revenue. People act and help the majority of times because they seek financial compensation. So it continues to flower everywhere around us, and it can get very, very overwhelming. And also, we again see the games of debt in the conversation between T-Hall and his brother Briss. And that was one of my favorite conversations of this first book, because it says, "You chose the protection of the King's Guard and now the role of champion, where debt will never find you." As for Hull, he walked away from gold and its deadly traps and sought to honor in saving people. And T-Hall will end up achieving what their mother couldn't because of the burden of having children, because she would have torn it apart. So these Pedak brothers, I think, are the most intelligent ones, really, because they know how poisonous, how deadly, how dangerous the whole idea of the system, the whole idea of progress and money and debt, and they know how all of that is incredibly dangerous, and they seek to avoid it. So that's a really, really interesting theme that I think it's worth touching upon. Another thing that I think might be a symbol, but I'm not entirely sure, is the idea of knots. Because we see it many times being mentioned in this first book, especially, for example, when the Sengar brothers are going down into the stone bowl. They say that the knots of these words were anything but loose, for example. So to me, the idea of knots means that something that resists, something that carries the weight and the burden of actions. To me, it also seems like things can get twisted, things that are getting complicated or somehow convoluted. But also knots are very practical. So I'm not sure if this will have anything to do. I'm not sure if this will be some type of foreshadowing of future events. But that was something that I really thought it could be something related to the story. I really enjoyed, by the way, the stone bowl scene. It was really nice. This holy site was very interesting. It was awesome to see Scavandari's dragon skull there, and also I realized now that it was the cover. I don't know why in the cover the Edur are not like grayish. Like they seem like actual humans. So that was something that was nice to see. And we get to see more information on all of the bones of the Kitchen Chamal, and I'm really curious to see what happened there and some more backstory. But it really took us back to the conversation between Mael and Gothos, where they tell about Kilamandaros needing to take charge of Scavandari. So that was really, really nice. And again, we see the idea of knots between Binadas and Hill Pedak. And again, it's the relation between knots and words when it says each word is a knot in an invisible net. Again, mentioning of it. So to me, this puts into question the validity of the words, the resistance of promises, of treaties, of pacts between tribes, or maybe something more. I'm not entirely sure. And then the final symbol that I thought was very interesting was the whole idea of the white crow. The obvious thing is that Silka's ruin is represented as, because he's an albino, he is represented as this kind of omen, and he represents the whole idea of the crow represents the idea of Silka's ruin and everything. But I really enjoyed the similarities and difference between both Udina's and Trul Sengar's reaction to seeing this omen in the first book. And they reacted very differently, but at the same time they panicked a lot, so that was really nice. And the idea of white crows, because white crows don't really belong, they don't really exist. I think I've never heard of a white crow, because they're generally black, so it's kind of strange and different. But I don't know, I'm really curious to see what this white crow will do in the future, what it will convey to the whole story. So that was very, very interesting. In terms of the characters, I'm just a huge fan of this cast of characters. I feel like these stories will make the whole book really, really tight, really consistent. I've seen a lot of people saying that this is one of the tightest books in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. Obviously, we first see Sengar, my beloved Sengar, who I adored so much in House of Chains. He was just such a melancholic, beautiful character. His relationship with Onrak made it one of the best romances in the whole Malazan Book of the Fallen for me. And in this book, he seems like I can see why he will get shorned. Like, it's very clear. Most of the times I feel like he's wanting to speak, he is wanting to act in some way, but he doesn't really get there. We see his brother, for example, who I hugely despise, many times mocking him for his inability to act in the name of the tribe. For example, in the quote that says, "You are too filled with doubt, brother. It binds you in place." Doubt is something that is a really big thing in Troll's mind. And to me, he feels like some type of outcast in his tribe. I don't know why, but I have that feeling. One of the things that I have a question is that he seems like he's in love with Mayan. I'm not really sure if that's the case, but he doesn't voice much of his concerns except with the case of Mayan. If it's something that's concerned with her, he's just so involved, and I don't understand why, because it's not his betrothed. So he shouldn't really be that involved. So that's something that I have a question. Like, I think he probably feels something towards her. One of the other Sengar brothers that I love so much is Binadas. He's a type of wild free spirit. He doesn't really care that much about what's going on back in the village. He just prefers to wander around the forest freely. And I can really, really relate with him. But up until now, we haven't really seen much of him. So I hope we get to see some more of him in the future. In terms of Fear Sengar, I think he has a very formal kind of relationship with his brothers. Obviously, he is the figurehead of the family, at least the brothers of the family. So I guess it's normal that he acts in a very formal way. But I haven't really been able to see much through his character. But let's hope and we see more. Obviously, I hate the younger brother Rulad, who's always trying to impress Mayan in everything he does, and he mocks Troll so much. Like, I hate him. I feel like many of the younger brothers and families are somehow mirroring how Rulad acts in a way. But with him, I feel like somehow I have the assumption that he will become the villain of the story in the future. He will somehow maybe take control of the Sengar family and therefore shorn Troll and go against him. But that's just an assumption that I have. Also, even though I'm not a huge fan of Udinas, the leathery slave, mostly because most of his sequences and his viewpoints are related to dreams or many things related to magic or visions or the Feather Witch, which makes me incredibly confused, I must say. But I really enjoyed seeing the contrast between the leathery traditions and the Edur within the village. And I like having a viewpoint of someone who doesn't belong in the tribe, and also seeing viewpoints that actually belong to the tribe. So that, I think that was really, really nice to incorporate him into the story. And something that I also loved was that from Udinas's viewpoint, we get to see how deceivable humanity actually is, because like they all believe that Silka's ruin was the one who betrayed Skabandari, and in reality it was the other way around. So it just makes it so like evident how deceivable history is in itself. Like, the lesson of history is that no one learns, because like so many things happen but we don't realize that are actually that way, because like time goes by and people speak from generation to generation and things change. So we're actually, as humanity, really, really deceivable. And something that I also really found really surprising, and that was very mind-blowing, was that the wraiths that are part of the Edur are actually fallen Andi that were slaughtered. So that was a big revelation for me, and also a very good idea that I hadn't thought about. So it makes me question, what will these shadows or these wraiths do in the future? Will they take revenge in some way? And a character that I really, really I really find really scary is the warlock Hanan Mossag and his shadow. His shadow is just so scary. I don't know what this full unveiling of the Warren will do. I'm not sure where he's drawing so much power. But the scene with the longboats, where he wipes out all of the Lethari boats and he calls upon this huge force from under the seas, and they kill all of the Lethari sailors, that was just so horrific. Like, it's amazing how Erickson can just, like, from one moment to the other, incorporate these moments of absolute horror. So that was a very, very intense moment of the story. One of the things I really, really enjoy and I appreciate, and it makes me realize why Erickson is my favorite writer, and it is that he treats woman in a way no other writer out there, fantasy genre or any other genre, well, maybe other genres, yeah, but not in fantasy at least. He treats women so well. They are just so well developed. His female characters can have the same possibilities. They can have the same implications compared to any other male character in the story. For example, in terms of the military characters, we see the Predator from the palace. In terms of the magic, which we see the Feather Witch, who is incredibly powerful, and also a very interesting character. In terms of the holes, I'm very, very lost. I really enjoyed having something like a different magic system, but I feel like the holes and the Deck of Dragons are somehow related, or at least the holes might be an ancient version of the Deck of Dragons, but I'm very unsure. But the scene with the Wival and what happens to Udinas, and he gets like ripped off and everything, that was very intense. I wasn't expecting that at all, but it was really interesting. We also, for example, another female character that I really enjoy was Mayen, even though I'm not a huge fan of her. At the beginning, we see how she's treated in some way as an object, in a way, like talking. She doesn't really, like, all of these brothers are talking about her. There's these, games of like one brother trying to flirt with her. She's seen as this kind of prize. But then we see at the end of the chapter, at the end of the book, of the first book, we see that she's starting to take control of her whole character. She is starting to even manipulate some of them in the dinner with the Singer family, and Ruth actually ends up doing what Mayen suggests. So we get to see some glimpses of her power as a character. And also, I feel like she is the one who is manipulating Rulad into thinking that he's going to be the one that is sacrificed. But we'll have to continue reading, but I feel like she is incredibly powerful, really. One of the other characters is Seren Pedak. She is one of the only Aquiters, which means that she's actually an important person in the sense of there's not many Aquiters in Lether. I want to see more of her. She makes a lot of distinctions throughout the first book between men and women, how they interact with, for example, I think it was Pinadas. But I'm really curious to see more of her. And another female character that, even though we haven't had the opportunity to see her viewpoint, I really enjoyed, was that even though the king in Lether is the one who is taking command of the whole Lether empire, the queen, I feel, is the invisible hand in all of it. It feels like she is actually the player who is moving the figures in the chess game. She's very manipulative and powerful. I love the idea that she has also consorts in an egalitarian way with the king. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I must say that I was very, very happy with the whole palace setting. It really reminded me of A Song of Ice and Fire, with the kind of evil queen manipulating her impulsive son, like Joffrey. And then also having like a really, like the advisor, the eunuch I think it's called, Nifadas, which it really reminded me of Varys also from Game of Thrones. So I loved a lot of similarities that it had. Also the throne room, it was like going back a bit to the Song of Ice and Fire, which I love. So it was really nice. I love the setting. And then going on to the Benedict brothers. I must say I am the biggest fan of Bug and T-Hall. I think they are the most amazing duo I have ever seen in my life. Their dialogues are just so precious. I think T-Hall has become my favorite character. I think he has probably replaced Karsa in that sense, but he's just so amazing. Their dialogue feels just so real. It feels straight to the point. It's full of humor. It's intense. It's blunt. I love every second of it. I am curious to see how they will manage to kind of fix the eternal domicile and how they will destroy the economy. But I'm really happy to have T-Hall in this book because he's just amazing. There had been a lot of people telling me, watch out for T-Hall and Bug because you're gonna really enjoy their scenes. But I didn't expect it to be so good. So I'm really happy with that. One of the other Pedak brothers is Hol Pedak. I feel really sorry for him, really. I think it's a character who I can sympathize the most with. He says he's going to be the sword in this type of vengeance, so I'm not really sure what he's going to do. Because I feel like, yeah, he's going to try and promote war between the Edur and the Lether, but I feel like he's going to do something quite with a lot of implications on the whole story. I think he's gonna probably sacrifice himself in some way. But the fact that he self-exiled himself after everything he did, he was deceived into doing the most horrible thing and actually giving these tribes to the empire in some way. And he didn't even know he was doing it. So I feel really terribly sorry for him. But again, it makes you realize how easy it is for anyone in the world to be manipulated into working for this invisible system, invisible empty throne, you know. So that's something that is interesting. And Briss Pedak also, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed that character so much. He has, I feel, many conflicts within himself. So many things he has to take care of. I was very glad to see that we got to see the conversation between him and T-Hall at some point because it gave us a better idea of their relationship. And I love, again, as I said before, the setting of the palace. Again, it reminds me so much of A Song of Ice and Fire. But we see that, especially with his character, who is full of glory, it's full of achievements. I mean, he's the master of the sword, he's the Finad, and also the king's champion. But we see from this quote that says, the way he stood as if entirely alone in a large, overwhelming world. He makes me think that he isn't truly happy, even though he even has kind of gone against the idea of debts, the idea of the whole system. He isn't really satisfied with his life, and therefore it's evidence that money and gold and glory, or perhaps titles and being at the top of the mountain, isn't really related to happiness at all. So I have many questions related to this first book. I really enjoyed it, I must say. I'm really intrigued to see where the story is going. I can't wait to see the scene where the great meeting will take place, and I'm really excited to see where this is going. So this will be all of it for today. I think I've gone on for a bit of time, so sorry about that, and thank you if you have been sticking with the video till the end. I really appreciate it. If you can like the video, if you can subscribe, if you enjoy my videos in general. And if you want to comment, I'm always very happy. If you want to comment on some of my assumptions about the symbols of the story, I'm also very happy to talk about it. So thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video.